Hey guys, welcome to another one of my Civilization 6 videos. Now, this time we're going to be talking about the changes that are coming to Civ 6. Now, we've seen quite a bit of Civ 6 so far, and more information is on the way. So I'm not going to go super into detail in this specific video, but I'm going to give you 10 big points that should give you a very nice overview of what's changing in Civ 6 compared to previous Civilization games. Now, of course, there are hundreds of little changes here and there, which all are very interesting, but if I went into all of them, this video would be a couple hours long. So let's get started on 10 notable changes in Civilization 6. First up, of course, the one that everyone is talking about, unstacked cities. But there's a few interesting points of unstacked cities that you may not be aware of. So, of course, there are districts now, like everything is not piled on into the city center. Buildings are built in districts, and districts are specialized. So for example, you could have a science district, and that's where your library and university goes. You can have a religious district, which is where you build your temples. And of course, wonders themselves will take up a tile by itself. We've seen the pyramids, we've seen the oracles. Some have requirements, like the pyramids need to be on a desert tile. But besides the general unstackedness of cities, there are adjacency bonuses of where you place your stuff. So for example, science and religious districts will benefit from mountains, and an industrial area will benefit from being next to a mine. But two particular districts do stand out for me anyway. There's one, the military district, where, well, when you first build a city, it can't attack by itself. You need to build city walls for your city to be able to attack nearby enemy units. But this military district will benefit from the walls as well, and wherever you place the military district will also be able to fire upon the enemy. So, for example, if you have two cities, building a military district somewhere between them will give you a larger coverage of where you can protect. And having the military district out in your lands, a bit away from your city, will help protect the districts and the buildings that you have, which are further away. And the second district that I really do like is that there's a dock district. You don't have to build your city on the coast for that city to produce sea or naval units. And this is going to change city placement enormously. I mean, of course, if you do build a city on the water's edge, you can build water units straight away. But if you build it somewhere slightly further away, you don't have to worry that, oh, this city will never be able to produce boats ever. Which doesn't really make sense if you think about it. So they introduced the dock district. You build it next to the water instead of your city, and then from there your water units will be produced. Now, moving on, still somewhat related to cities, but we're going to talk about happiness. Happiness is now localized instead of global, which is going to make a lot of people happy because you now can build a city, a small city far away just to grab some strategic resource, and no matter how unhappy that city gets, it will not affect the rest of your empire. And happiness is sort of tied in with the new housing mechanic, where your city will grow, and the larger it grows, the more districts you can build. And it'll grow based on how much housing you can provide. Housing is provided by certain buildings like granaries, and even barracks gives certain housing. Fresh water gives housing, so aqueducts are having rivers. But to keep people happy, you have to balance your housing and your growth with amenities. So happiness and city size has always been sort of tied in, but the way it works now is slightly different. But the main point is that happiness is now local to each city. Then the third point. Roads are now built by trade, because we've seen that the worker unit is now a builder unit and it has limited uses. So building a road would use up a use of that, and that would not really be worth it in many situations. But now roads are more realistically sort of built by trade. So you build a caravan and you decide to send it to trade between two cities, and a road will be constructed as this caravan goes between these two cities. But this also means that trading with another civilization will establish a road between your two cities. So you really should be careful about who you trade with. If you trade with someone who you think is going to attack you in the future, well, you're just setting up a road for them to march their troops over to your empire. So trading is now very much tied more into the political scene and how much you really trust the people around you. Oh, and a note on trade. Because you can see what a city is producing, the benefit of trading with a certain city is dependent on what that city is producing. So if you see a city with a lot of science, trading with that city will get you more science. Now, speaking of trusting people, the AIs now have various agendas. They have a main agenda tied to their civilization, and then they have more secret agendas. So for example, some of the main agendas we already know about is Cleopatra hates civilizations with small military. So if you have a very small military, they're more likely to attack you. Whereas Roosevelt hates people declaring war on his continent. So a common scenario that a lot of people have talked about from the people who have played the game at E3 and at demos and stuff is that the player would have a small military, Egypt will declare war, America gets upset and then declares war on Egypt. But the important point here is that all these agendas give reason to the AI to do things. Now, some of the secret agendas they've just mentioned in passing is, for example, this civilization will want to be the biggest naval power in the game, or that they're particularly going for a culture victory. Now in Civilization 5, all this sort of information about who's building what and who's doing what and who's declaring war on who, all of this would just sort of be on a news ticker that would just be fed to you constantly. But this time around, all this information, well, you have to work for it through a gossip system. Now early on in the game, you would build through trade, you would trade with other civilizations and they would bring back not just goods and bonuses, but you'll also pick up gossip about what they're building, maybe some hints on their civic choices or their government or their military status. And as the game goes on, getting into espionage and spies, you'll get to be able to go to deeper layers of gossip up into like top secret stuff. Alright, moving on. Units can now stack again. Now it's not like the death stacks of Civ 4 and before, but Civ 5 sort of went the exact opposite route where units could not stack at all. But now there's limited unit stacking, where you could stack military units together if they're the same kind to make a sort of super military unit, or you could combine support units with your main units. And it's not just moving them onto the same tiles together, you actually tie them together so they move together as a single unit. Now this might be a really nice middle ground, and it'll allow you to, well, military is going to change, especially when you're sieging a city, because your units don't have to be so spread out. You could actually tie some of them together. But how that actually plays out, we're going to have to wait and see. Then let's talk about Eureka Moments. Now, technology in Civilization 6 has changed somewhat, but instead of having, as what they said, an ivory tower of just researching a single line, trying to beeline it as something, well, now your research needs to be, well, it relies on your surroundings and what you're actually doing in the game. So for example, settling on coastal areas will actually give you benefits to coastal technologies like sailing. Discovering a stone deposit will boost you towards masonry. Now these are called Eureka Moments, and basically they're sort of like mini quests based on your surroundings where you can take advantage of the lands and the things you do, and it'll boost you towards specific technologies. Even meeting someone, like meeting another civilization, has been shown to give you a boost towards writing. So taking advantage of your surroundings and really planning what technologies you want to aim for is going to be more important than ever. And then civics have changed quite a bit as well. Now they haven't talked too much about civics so far, but what we've seen actually does give us a lot of information. Civics works a lot like technology, and it actually has some boost based on your actions. We've seen killing a barbarian encampment makes your civilization want to adopt some more militaristic civics. But the particular government window that we've seen so far shows that there are 4 main policy categories. There's military, economic, diplomatic, and wildcard policies. And you sort of control this with 4 different types of cards. And these cards are unlocked through cultural endeavors and also based on your actions throughout the world. And this adds another layer of specialization to your civilization. And some of them can be quite powerful and can be adopted for specific situations. Like we can see discipline giving +5 combat strength when fighting against barbarians. So if barbarians are giving you some trouble, well, you might want to adopt that military policy. Or you could use a wildcard policy to focus on getting great scientists. And now, moving on to religion. Religion has been the thing they've talked about the least, but there have been a couple clues here and there about what's really changed. And I think the main thing that they've mentioned so far is that religion now adds on top of pantheons. Now, this is something that Ed Beach was talking about quite recently, where in Civ 5 you would have pantheons, and these pantheons would sort of be overridden by incoming religions. But that's not really how religion worked throughout history. So for example, he gave the example of Christianity coming over to a new country, and instead of the Christian traditions just overriding everything that was there already. It's sort of adopted and adapted to the local culture, and that's how religion's going to be working in Civ 6, where you would be picking pantheons, and as new religions and new things build on top of it, it adds on into one larger and more unique religion. And also, there has been talk of what they're calling religious wars, which almost sounds quite militaristic, but they haven't gone into detail into that. So that's something we want to look out for, but it's definitely going to be a big change from before. Then onto the multiplayer side. Multiplayer has always been generally a lengthy endeavor in Civilization, and I know there are certain game modes and certain groups out there which have shorter games of Civilization. Usually they set settings to make it like a few hours long or 2 hours long, and that's definitely possible. But a big focus of how they're designing Civ 6 multiplayer is to have new game modes and to have new ways of playing the game in scenarios, in co-op or competitive and things like that, to be able to have more interesting and more varied experiences through multiplayer in Civilization. They did particularly mention being able to complete games in single sessions. So we can expect lots of new and different game modes to come with Civ 6 that will allow you to play multiplayer without having to spend the entire day or even days or weeks playing a game. And they should be built into how things work at launch. And finally, based on all of this information that we know, we can conclude that there are going to be more viable playstyles. Having religious wars, for example, is something that I'm really excited for and interested in seeing how that's going to work. And they've also mentioned like a civilization focusing on culture will not just be overwhelmed by a militaristic civilization, because culture will get you a lot of civics and could even do things like doubling your production of military units, or getting them promoted faster, making unit maintenance cheaper, and even having bonuses on certain terrains. These civics will give you a distinctive advantage. And there's even policies that we've seen where military units in cities count as amenities, which keep people happy. And this is probably a conclusion that I'm most happy about, because there's no more best playstyle. It really depends on the terrain you're given, where you start, and making the right choices, rather than having a lucky good start or happening to miss out on certain resources. And just in general, being able to play how you want to play to the best of your civilization's ability based on the world you start with. And finally, as a bonus, I should mention the World Congress system. This time around, the World Congress system will not be launching with the base game of Civilization 6, because Ed Beach said the way they implemented that was to see how a lot of games played out in Civilization 5. So the World Congress system will be coming back, but most likely in an expansion or DLC for Civilization 6. And it will change based on how people are playing Civilization 6. So I'm not going to go too much into detail about that because, well, nothing's confirmed for that. Just thought you'd like to know. Alright, and those are some of the biggest changes in Civilization 6 compared to previous Civilization games. Now, it's important to remember that it's still a Civilization game, and most things are still the same. It'll be familiar to Civ veterans, and a lot of people who have played the game have said that it still feels like a Civilization game. And we can hope that these changes make Civilization 6 the best version of Civilization we've had so far, and we won't have to wait for extra DLC or expansions before it actually becomes good. Alright, and that's it. So, what do you think of the changes? And are there any other changes that you'd like to see? There's a lot I didn't mention here, so what are you most excited about? And if you'd like more from me on Civilization 6, well, I've got a playlist linked in the description, and also you can click the annotations on the screen right now to check out some of the other interesting stuff I've done. I've gone into more detail on certain things in those videos for sure. Alright, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.